In tonight's video, we dive into 8 of the most disturbing true Arizona small-town horror stories, encounters that prove the desert is never as empty or peaceful as it looks. From forgotten back roads outside Tuba City to the silent depths of Saguaro National Park, these stories expose the darker side of Arizona that tourists never see. Rangers, hikers, campers, and locals all share the moments when an ordinary night beneath the red rocks turned into something far more terrifying. Strange lights drifting through the pines near Sedona, footsteps matching a hiker's pace in the open desert, abandoned houses appearing on roads that don't exist, voices echoing from Cold War silos, and figures running beside cars on the old Devil's Highway, long after nothing should be able to keep up. If you're new here, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell icon so you never miss a new true horror stories. Now get comfortable and let's start. I used to think Arizona nights were peaceful. Whenever people talked about the desert being dangerous, I assumed they meant the heat, the wildlife, or the long stretches of empty highway where a breakdown could kill you faster than anything supernatural. I never believed the stories about shadows that moved on their own, or strange figures seen running across the road at impossible speeds, or the things truckers claimed they saw pacing them through the mountains. I believe all of it now. This happened when I was driving north along US Route 191, the old Devil's Highway. I didn't know that name at the time. I only took the road because I was trying to get home faster after buying a used truck down in Phoenix. The dealership took forever with the paperwork, so by the time I finally left the city, the sun was already gone. I should have waited until morning, but I was stubborn and stupid and convinced I could handle a long drive through the night. By the time I reached Clifton, the town was so quiet it didn't even feel real. Lights were on in a few houses, but I didn't see a single person outside. The mountains boxed everything in so tightly that the sky looked too small. I stopped to get gas, and the woman behind the counter kept giving me these weird glances. I asked her if the road north was clear, and she hesitated just a little too long before nodding. "You driving through there this late?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Trying to make Colorado by tomorrow." She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then shut it again. "Drive safe," she finally said, but it didn't sound like a casual goodbye. It sounded like a warning. I laughed it off and got back in the truck. I didn't laugh again for the rest of the night. The desert changed the second I pulled out of town. It was subtle at first, just a darker stretch of highway, fewer signs, fewer houses. But soon the road narrowed, the guardrails disappeared, and the mountains swallowed the moonlight. The only thing keeping the darkness away was my high beams, and even those didn't seem strong enough. The light faded too quickly, like it was getting absorbed instead of reflected. I turned on the radio to break the silence, but it only made things worse. It picked up a station for about 3 seconds, then cut to static. Not soft static either. It sounded harsh and uneven, almost like someone breathing in bursts. I turned the dial, hoping for music or even a talk show, but every station was the same. Static layered over slow, steady breathing. The only time it stopped was when I switched the radio off completely. After that, the silence felt intentional. A few miles later, the first thing happened. I heard footsteps. At first, I told myself it was something loose under the truck. A strap, a piece of plastic from the wheel well, anything mechanical that could hit the pavement in a rapid rhythm. But the sound wasn't metallic, it wasn't scraping, it wasn't rattling. It was soft, fast, consistent, footsteps, running. I slowed down a little, confused, rolling the window halfway to listen. That was the biggest mistake I made all night. The footsteps were keeping pace with me. I wasn't going slow either. I was doing a little over 50 on a straight stretch. Nothing runs 50 miles per hour except large animals, and those do not sound like bare feet slapping asphalt. I kept the window cracked, trying to convince myself I was imagining it. The wind was cold against my face. The desert was pitch black except for a thin strip of road ahead. Something moved just beyond that strip, something I couldn't see but could hear. The footsteps grew louder, clearer, more deliberate. Then something tapped the passenger side window, a single tap, like a knuckle. My entire body locked up. I didn't turn to look. I couldn't. It felt like if I acknowledged whatever was out there, it would become real enough to reach inside and pull me out. But the tapping didn't stop. Tap, tap. Slow, spaced out, like it was making sure I heard it. My throat closed up. Every breath hurt. I kept my eyes locked on the highway lines whipping under the headlights. The temptation to look was overwhelming. I fought it the same way you fight the urge to look over your shoulder when you hear someone whisper your name behind you. Another tap. This one harder, followed by a long drag across the glass. I sped up. The engine roared. The truck trembled. The footsteps grew faster. Whatever it was matching my speed without getting winded, without stumbling, without making a single sound other than those horrible, rhythmic slaps against the pavement. When the road curved, the headlights swung just enough to light up the shoulder for a second. That second ruined every night of sleep I've tried to have since. A figure was running beside my truck, maybe 4 feet from the door. Long legs, too long, arms bent at angles that looked broken. The way it moved didn't make sense. It didn't run like a human or an animal. It glided in these uneven bursts like something pushing off the ground at random intervals. Its head was turned completely toward me, not glancing, not facing forward. Its entire head was turned sideways, locked onto mine, black eyes reflecting the headlights like mirrors. The mouth hung open just a little too wide, like the jaw was unhinged. Its skin looked stretched thin, grayish, tight around its skull. I think I screamed. I'm not sure. The next few seconds were a blur of panic. I slammed the gas pedal so hard the truck fishtailed. I gripped the wheel, cursing, crying, begging the engine to give me more speed. The figure didn't fall behind. It didn't even look like it was trying. The footsteps stayed right beside me, right in sync. Tap on the window, another tap, then a dragging sound like a fingertip tracing along the metal door. I pushed the speedometer to 70. The truck rattled like it was going to come apart. Every curve felt like I was seconds from launching off a cliff. But the footsteps never fell away. At one point, they disappeared entirely, and for a moment I thought I'd lost it. The silence returned, thick and suffocating. My breathing was ragged. My vision was blurry. I kept wiping my eyes because I wasn't sure if I was crying or if sweat was dripping into them. The radio snapped on by itself. Not static, not breathing. A voice, my own voice. It whispered my name, slowly, stretched, like someone trying to mimic human speech for the first time. It was wrong, distorted, too deep. The sound filled the cab as if it came from every speaker at once. Then it whispered, "Look." I shut the radio off so hard my finger hurt. I don't know how far I drove before I saw the first sign of civilization. A gas station. A single bright rectangle of light in the desert. I felt like I was seeing it through a tunnel. I didn't brake until the last second. I pulled up too fast, tires squealing, nearly hitting the ice machine out front. I jumped out and ran inside. The clerk stared at me like I'd walked in covered in blood. I must have looked insane, sweating, shaking, barely able to speak. He asked if I needed help, and all I managed to say was, "Something followed me." He didn't laugh. He didn't question it. He just nodded slowly and said, "People say that." I stayed in that gas station for almost an hour. When I finally worked up the courage to go back out to the truck, I noticed the passenger side window had streaks on it. 3 long, greasy smears curling downward. Not fingerprints exactly. More like the residue left behind when someone drags their knuckles down glass. The smell bothered me too. There was a faint scent of dirt, sweat, and something rotten. It clung to the door like it had soaked into the paint. I didn't look around the lot to see if anything was hiding behind the pumps or crouching near the dumpsters. I got in, locked the doors, and drove away as fast as I could. The rest of the night, I stared at the mirrors every few seconds, convinced I'd see that shape running across the highway to catch up. I never used that road again. I won't even drive through Arizona at night now. And I still roll the windows up every time I travel, even on warm days, even when I know how stupid that sounds. Because footsteps don't run 50 miles an hour beside a moving truck, and tapping on the window doesn't happen in the middle of the desert. Something followed me that night, something that wanted me to look, and I'm terrified that if I drive that road again, it won't just pace me this time. It'll wait for me to stop. I grew up around the desert, so I never understood why people called it empty. It isn't empty. It listens, it watches, and sometimes it feels like it remembers you. The sky is big enough to make you feel small, and the silence can get so deep it starts to feel alive. You'd think I would have been used to that, but nothing prepared me for what I saw on the salt flats outside of Yuma. My friend David and I went out there late one night to take photos. He was into astrophotography, and the stretches of dry lake bed near the Laguna Mountains gave him some of the darkest skies in Arizona. We had been going for years, but this was the last time either of us ever stepped foot there. We left around midnight, taking a 2-lane road that cut across miles of pale dust and cracked earth. The moon was low and thin, just a sliver that didn't help with visibility at all. Our headlights carved a narrow path through a world that looked bleached and dead. About 3 miles in, I noticed something standing in the distance, a shape that the beams barely caught. I thought it was a signpost at first because it didn't move, not even a little. As we got closer, the shape sharpened into the outline of a person. A woman, just standing there, in the middle of the salt flats, at almost 1 in the morning. I slowed the car instinctively, not because I wanted to, but because my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. Something about her posture didn't look right. Her arms rested straight at her sides, but her fingers looked stiff, curled inward like she was clenching something invisible. David woke up from a half nap in the passenger seat and sat upright. "Why are you slowing?" he asked. "You see that?" I whispered. It was stupid to whisper inside a car with the windows rolled up. But the second I saw her, something hit me in the chest. A pressure, like the air had changed. Whispering felt instinctual. David leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. "Is that someone?" The woman was wearing a pale dress, long and loose, but the color was hard to make out in the headlight's reflection. Her hair was dark, falling over her shoulders in tangled strands. I stopped the car about 30 yards away. The engine hummed. The desert didn't. "What is she doing out here?" David muttered. The woman didn't react to the engine noise. She didn't look at us. She didn't move at all. Her feet were planted in the salt like she'd been standing there for hours. I hated every second we sat there. Something primal in me started screaming that we shouldn't be near her. I can't explain it. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anxiety. It felt like instinct, ancient animal instinct, telling me to leave. David reached for the door handle. "Don't," I snapped, grabbing his sleeve. "Dude, what if she needs help?" "No," I whispered again. "Something's wrong with her." "What, you think she's dangerous?" I didn't have a better explanation. I just shook my head. He hesitated, looking at her again. Then he slowly pulled his hand back inside. We sat there watching her. She didn't twitch, didn't breathe, didn't sway in the wind, because there wasn't any wind. The whole desert was still. That stillness was the worst part. Then the woman's head tilted. Not a slow turn, not a natural motion. It snapped toward us like a glitch. Just her head, not her body. Her neck didn't twist gradually. It just switched positions. Her face was pale. Her eyes looked dark, too dark, like there wasn't any white in them at all. The moment her face turned, the headlights flickered, both of them at the same time. It was just a blink, but it made the whole desert flash like a single frame in a horror film. When the lights returned, the woman was gone. Not walking away, not running, just gone. David gasped. "Where is she?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. She didn't walk. She didn't move. We scanned the flats wildly, searching for movement, a shadow, anything. The salt was flat for hundreds of yards in every direction. There was nowhere to hide. Then a soft thump came from behind the car. David froze. "Tell me that wasn't—" "Don't look," I whispered. I don't know why. I was terrified of what we'd see if we turned around. Another thump, this one louder, like something heavy tapping the trunk with its palm. David turned despite my warning. I didn't. I kept my eyes straight ahead because the second I turned around, I knew I'd see something I could never unsee. "Oh my God," David breathed. I finally forced myself to look into the rearview mirror. She was behind the car, standing right at the bumper. Same posture, same stillness, same dead eyes. But her face was closer now, much closer. Her head was tilted too far to the side, almost upside down, resting on her shoulder in a way no spine should allow. Her mouth hung open, not in an expression, not as if she was screaming, just open, like someone had carved her jaw loose. The window behind us fogged slightly. Not from inside, from the outside, like she was exhaling against the glass even though she was still 10 feet away. "Go," David whispered. "Go, go, go, go!" I slammed the truck into drive. The tires skidded, struggling for traction on the powdery surface. We jolted forward and I didn't look back. I kept my eyes locked on the stretch of road ahead, desperate to get out of the flats. We drove for maybe 20 seconds before David's voice cracked beside me. "She's ahead!" I hit the brakes. The truck lurched. My seatbelt dug into my chest. She was there again, standing directly in front of the headlights. Perfectly still, perfectly centered. Her face was clearer now. Too clear. Her eyes weren't just dark, they were hollow, empty sockets. No lids, no lashes, just black holes staring directly into the beams. And her mouth was open wider, much wider. Her jaw hung so low it almost touched her collarbone. I think I stopped breathing. She didn't walk, she didn't step, she flickered, like a skipped frame. One moment she was 10 feet away, the next she was 5. Headlights blinked again. She was at the hood, her hand pressed against the metal, fingers splayed. The skin on her arm looked stretched thin, like it barely covered the bone. Then she curled her fingers, tapping. Just once, then twice, then a slow drag, exactly like someone knocking on a door. I didn't wait for anything else. I swerved around her so hard I felt the wheels lift off one side, and the truck fishtailed before straightening out. I kept my foot on the gas until we hit paved road again. We didn't talk for the next 20 minutes. I didn't dare look in the mirrors. David didn't either. Only when we reached the outskirts of Yuma did either of us breathe normally again. We pulled into a brightly lit gas station and sat there for a long time, shaking. David kept saying he wanted to leave the state entirely. I didn't blame him. Before I got out of the truck, I glanced at the hood. There were prints on it, small, narrow, finger-shaped, 5 of them, pressed into the dust, perfectly defined, too long, flexible in the wrong places. I wiped them off before David saw them, because if he had, he would have tried to convince me of something I already knew. She wasn't a person. She never had been. And whatever she was, she didn't appear on the flats that night. She was waiting there, standing in silence, facing nothing, doing nothing, until we got close enough for her to notice us. And I'm terrified that next time, whoever she notices won't get the chance to drive away. I never planned to go inside an abandoned Titan missile silo. It wasn't on some bucket list or a dare or anything like that. The whole thing was an accident, or at least that's what I keep telling myself when I think about that night. Most of Arizona is covered in places you're not supposed to explore, and those old Cold War silos are at the top of that list. They look like concrete graves scattered across the desert, sealed, dead, forgotten. Except the one we found wasn't sealed. It started when my friend Tyler got obsessed with urban exploration videos. He kept trying to drag me into old mines, storm drains, forgotten buildings along the border. I went with him a few times, but after we stumbled across a rattlesnake nest inside an old copper tunnel, I told him I was done with that kind of crap. I thought he'd let it go. He didn't. One night he texted me asking if I could help him check something out south of Tucson. He said it was quick, safe, and not like the other places. I should have known those 3 words were red flags. But I wasn't sleeping well those days, and honestly just needed to get out of the house, so I said fine and picked him up. He directed me down a dirt road that barely qualified as a road. Every bump rattled the truck. The desert looked endless in every direction, flat stretches of scrub and dust under a cloudless sky. No houses, no lights, nothing. It felt like driving into a place the world forgot. Eventually we reached a chain-link fence. A large section of it had been cut and peeled back like someone lifted it open from the bottom. Tyler hopped out immediately. "Come on," he said, waving me through. "What is this place?" I asked. "Titan Silo," he said casually. "But don't worry, it's empty. I just want to look at the entrance. That's it." That was a lie. I didn't know it yet, but it was a big one. We walked a few hundred feet through loose gravel until the ground sloped downward into a circular concrete trench. At the bottom was a massive steel door that sat slightly open. It should have been welded shut. It should have been bolted, sealed, covered in warning signs. Instead, it was cracked open like someone was expecting company. I stared at the dark gap. Something cold moved down my spine. We're not going inside, I said. Just the first platform, he insisted. I already went in once. It's stable. You went in alone? Yeah, he said, but I didn't go far. There's something weird in there. I heard, I don't know, voices. It freaked me out. That's exactly why we should leave. He didn't listen. He pulled out 2 headlamps from his backpack and strapped one on my head before I could refuse. You just have to hear it, he said. It's insane. I wanted to turn around. I should have. But curiosity is a sickness, and Tyler knew how to weaponize it. We approached the door. The metal was cold, even though the desert air was warm. When we pushed it open, the hinges groaned loudly, echoing into the dark chamber beyond. A wave of cold, stale air washed over us. It smelled like rust, old water, and something faintly sour, like the air had been trapped for decades. I swept my headlamp across the interior. The first level was a metal walkway circling a massive shaft descending into total blackness. Pipes lined the walls. Catwalks crisscrossed the space like a giant mechanical spiderweb. The silence was so deep it felt physical. This is far enough, I said. Just listen, Tyler whispered. At first, all I heard was the distant drip of water somewhere far below. The deeper parts of the silo felt impossibly large, like a cavern carved into the earth. Then I heard something else, a faint crackle, like someone turning on a radio. Then a voice, not loud, not speaking words I could recognize, just murmuring, human murmuring. I jerked my head toward Tyler. Tell me you're doing that. He shook his head, eyes wide. That's what I heard last time. It's just echo, I said, but even I didn't believe it. We stood perfectly still, listening. The voice drifted upward from the lower levels, rising through the shaft like smoke. It wasn't just one voice, it was many. Layers of whispering overlapping each other, overlapping so fast and soft that it almost formed a single tone. Then it changed. A sharp, metallic click echoed through the silo, like someone flipping a switch. The murmuring stopped. A deeper voice came through, slow, deliberate, impossible to mistake as accidental. It sounded like it was coming across an intercom, old and crackling. Level 3 secured. My blood froze. Dude, Tyler whispered, there's no power in this place. A second voice responded, closer, clearer. Repeat, level 3 secured. I took a step back toward the door. We're leaving, now. But before either of us moved, something clanged below us, loud, heavy, echoing, a door slamming or opening. The whole silo vibrated. A third voice spoke. This one didn't come from an intercom. It came from the shaft. It was deep, wet, and distorted, like someone speaking underwater. Who's up there? My lungs locked. Tyler grabbed my arm with crushing force. Go! Go! We ran for the door. My boots hit the metal walkway so hard the sound cracked through the silence. As we reached the entrance, a gust of cold air rose from below, hitting us like a physical blow. The voice came again. Stop! I don't know how to explain this part. The word didn't sound human. It shook inside my skull like it bypassed my ears completely. I stumbled, grabbing the door frame to keep myself upright. Tyler screamed, "Move!" We squeezed out the gap and slammed the door shut. Even though I knew in my gut, the thing behind us didn't need doors to follow. We sprinted up the concrete ramp and didn't stop until we were halfway to the truck. The desert air felt warm, safe, almost comforting. Then something echoed from the silo entrance. A tapping, slow, deliberate, metal on metal, like knuckles on a huge steel door. Tap, tap, tap. The third tap was louder, aggressive. Then everything went silent. We reached the truck, threw ourselves in, and I floored it. Gravel flew behind us in a long, dusty trail. Tyler kept twisting around to look behind us, but neither of us saw anything. The silo sat in the desert like a dead, rotting structure. But as we cleared the fence and got back on the dirt road, the radio turned on by itself. Static filled the speakers. Then a voice came through. Not crackling, not distorted, clear. My voice. Level, calm, perfect imitation. Level 3 secured, proceed to level 4. Tyler slapped the radio, but it didn't shut off. My voice kept repeating the same line, over and over, until we reached the highway. Only when we were 50 miles from that place did the radio finally cut to silence. We didn't talk for the rest of the night. A few days later, Tyler texted me saying he hadn't slept since that night. He said he kept hearing footsteps outside his window, metal tapping on the glass at exactly 2 in the morning. I tried calling him the next day. He didn't answer. I went to his apartment. Everything inside was normal. Lights on, TV running, keys on the table. But Tyler was gone. Not missing like he packed a bag and left. Just gone. His shoes were still by the door. His wallet was on the couch. His phone was plugged in and fully charged. His truck was still in the parking lot. The police assumed he got drunk, wandered off, or left on his own. I didn't argue with them. I didn't tell them what we heard in the silo or how something mimicked my voice on the radio. I didn't tell them about the dream that woke me up last night either. The one where I'm standing in a cold metal room, staring down a ladder into darkness. The air smells stale. Pipes drip overhead. There's an intercom speaker on the wall. And behind me, something breathes. I don't know what's deeper inside that silo. I don't know who or what was speaking to us. But sometimes late at night, I swear I can still hear the static. Faint, almost gentle, and a voice saying, in perfect imitation of mine, proceed to the next level. I worked as a Border Patrol agent in southern Arizona for 6 years, and in that time, I saw things people would never believe. Most of the job was boring: dust, heat, long stretches of empty desert, and paperwork that never seemed to end. But now and then, something would happen that stuck with you. Strange lights, weird shadows, voices drifting across the desert at night that didn't sound like any person or animal I'd ever heard. But the thing that ended my career, that wasn't just strange. That was something alive, something watching, something that shouldn't have been able to move the way it did. I don't talk about this with anyone. The official report doesn't say anything except incident resulting in officer resignation, and even my closest friends think I quit because of burnout. I let them believe it. But every night since that last patrol, I've woken up sweating, convinced something is waiting just outside my bedroom window, crouched low, staring in. It started in the Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument near the border. The landscape down there is brutal: jagged mountains, cactus fields, huge stretches of nothing where heat rises off the ground like the air itself is melting. Most people never see the truly remote parts, but that night I was assigned to a sensor alert near a wash that barely had a name. I left the truck and hiked in on foot with my partner Ruiz. It was already dark, and the only light came from our flashlights and a sliver of moon barely hanging over the ridgeline. The desert at night feels like a different world. Sound travels strangely. Wind pushes sand around in patterns that look like movement, even when nothing's there. You start imagining things in the darkness. Figures crouching, shadows shifting. We got about a mile in when Ruiz leaned close and whispered, "Do you hear that?" At first I didn't. Just the usual desert noise, wind brushing across rocks, the distant rasp of insects. But then something else crept in. A scratch, a scrape. Not regular, not rhythmic, like something dragging itself over rock in slow, uneven pulls. "Mountain lion?" I whispered. "Too heavy," Ruiz said. We shut off our flashlights. It's what you do when you're not sure who's watching. Let your eyes adjust. Wait. Listen. Darkness washed over us, thick and all-consuming. It took about 30 seconds before shapes started forming. Then I saw it. At first it looked like a person crouched low on the ground, maybe 30 yards ahead. Its back was to us, but something about the posture wasn't right. Its elbows stuck out too far. Its legs looked twisted underneath it, like bones pushing the wrong direction. It was completely still. "Hey!" Ruiz called softly. "Border Patrol, identify yourself." The figure didn't move. I felt something deep in my chest, like my body was warning me before my brain could understand why. A tightness, a pressure. The same feeling you get when you know a wild animal is close, even if you can't see it yet. "Don't move toward it," I whispered. Ruiz ignored me. He started walking, hand on his holster, slow and cautious. The figure shifted, not turned, not stood, shifted, like its body warped sideways for a second, then snapped back into shape. Every hair on my arm stood up. My mouth went dry. "Ruiz," I whispered urgently. "Back up. Something's wrong." He stopped. "Who's out there?" he called again. "Hands where I can see them." The figure slowly lifted its head, not up, backward. It bent its neck in a way that should have snapped it clean off. The head tilted until the face was upside down, staring at us. I didn't see eyes, just two dark pits reflecting faint moonlight. Then it opened its mouth. The sound that came out wasn't human. It wasn't even animal. It was like metal scraping against rock, layered with a low guttural rumble. I felt it vibrate in my ribs. "Back up," I hissed. Ruiz finally listened. We stepped back in unison. The creature moved again, but this time it dropped to all fours, or something like all fours. Its arms bent in a backward way, and its legs folded underneath it like a spider preparing to strike. Then it started running, not toward us, beside us. It circled. Fast, too fast. 1 second it was 10 yards away. The next it was a blur disappearing behind a mound of rocks. Dust kicked up around us even though we couldn't see it directly. "What the hell is that?" Ruiz whispered. "Move," I said. "Now." We turned on our flashlights. That was a mistake. The beam landed on a tall cactus 30 feet away. Something crouched beside it, long, raw-looking limbs, torso too narrow. Its head turned toward us, but its body stayed perfectly still. Its mouth hung open like it was mimicking how humans breathe, but the chest never rose. Ruiz swallowed audibly. "We fire?" "Not unless it moves." It moved. So fast my eyes barely tracked it. One blink and it was at another cactus. Another blink and it was halfway up the wash wall. Another blink, it was right behind us. I heard the crunch of gravel. Ruiz spun and fired 2 rounds. The muzzle flash lit up the desert in bright bursts. I expected to see blood or movement or anything indicating a hit. Nothing. The creature wasn't there anymore. The sound of something scuttling echoed through the darkness. It was above us. No, behind us. No, circling us again. Fast. Too fast. "We can't stay here," I whispered. We started running toward the truck. Every few seconds, I felt something watching us from a different direction. A shape darting between rocks, a shadow sliding across the ground, a low clicking sound that made my skin crawl. We reached the halfway point when Ruiz stopped suddenly. "It's blocking the path." He wasn't wrong. The creature stood in the trail a few yards ahead. This time it wasn't crouched. It stood on its hind legs, or something like hind legs. It was taller than any person, but too thin to be strong. Its arms hung long and limp, fingers nearly dragging through the dirt. It tilted its head like a confused dog. Then it made a sound that froze my blood. It spoke, in Ruiz's voice. "Stop," it said, perfect imitation except deeper. Ruiz stumbled backward. "No, no." I pulled him up. "Run." We went off trail, crashing through cactus and loose rock, not caring what we stepped on. Thorns tore my pants. Something sliced my calf. Pain didn't matter. Survival did. The creature followed. I didn't see it. I heard it. Not running, crawling. The sounds were all around us, scraping, breathing, low growls that made the air vibrate. When we finally reached the truck, Ruiz fumbled with the keys. His hands were shaking too hard. I snatched them and unlocked the doors. The moment I got inside, I smelled something foul, like wet dirt mixed with rot. I whipped around expecting to see it in the back seat. Nothing. I slammed the door and started the engine. Ruiz dove into the passenger seat. "Go!" he yelled. I floored it. The headlights cut across the desert as we sped down the dirt path. I kept checking the mirrors, convinced I'd see it sprinting behind us on all fours, but the darkness stayed empty. Then Ruiz stiffened beside me. "It's in the back," he whispered. My heart stopped. "What?" "It's in the bed of the truck." I didn't look. I couldn't. Something banged against the rear window. Not a hand, not a fist. Something heavy. Something that shouldn't exist. Another bang, then a dragging noise across the metal. Nails or claws scraping. I didn't slow. I didn't check. I kept my eyes locked on the road until we hit pavement. Only when we crossed onto the main highway did the banging stop. Then nothing. No movement. No sound. No sign anything had ever been there. When we reached the nearest station, we checked the truck bed. Tracks, long streaks like something had crouched in it. Something heavy, something clawed. Ruiz quit 2 days later. I filed my report, but left out everything except unknown hostile animal presence. Now I'm the one who can't sleep. Because sometimes, very late, I hear tapping on my bedroom window. Slow, patient, like it's practicing a voice it heard once, a voice it wants to use again. I've camped all over Arizona, Flagstaff Forest, the Mogollon Rim, the Superstitions, but nothing ever scared me the way Sedona did last spring. People always talk about the red rocks like they're healing, peaceful, mystical. Maybe that's true during the day, but at night, those same rocks feel like walls leaning in, listening to you breathe. My friends, Amber and Joel, had invited me on a last-minute camping trip in an area just outside Sedona city limits, far enough from any trails that you wouldn't see another person. It was late April, warm enough to sleep comfortably, and the sky was supposed to be perfectly clear. I'd been stressing over work and wanted the break, so I didn't hesitate. We got there right before sunset. The rocks glowed this deep orange that looked almost fake. Sedona does that. It tricks you into thinking it's beautiful, and then you start noticing how quiet it really is. Too quiet. Even the wind sounded different, like it was blowing through hollow spaces. We set up camp, got a fire going, and sat around talking about nothing important. For about an hour, everything felt normal. Just the pop of cedar wood, the smell of smoke, the occasional hoot of an owl from somewhere in the dark. We even joked about aliens, because everyone jokes about aliens in Sedona. Then the first light appeared. Amber noticed it first. She pointed past me toward a cluster of pines near the edge of our campsite. "Do you see that?" she asked. I turned, expecting a flashlight or maybe another group of campers walking through. But this wasn't a flashlight. It was a single orb, bluish-white, floating between the trees, about the size of a baseball, too bright to be a bug, too steady to be anything natural. Joel squinted at it. "Drone, maybe?" "No," Amber said. "That's not a drone. Look how smooth it moves." It drifted between the trunks like it was gliding on air. No sound, no flicker, no upward or downward motion. Just a slow, deliberate slide around the trees. Then another light appeared beside it. Then another. 3 in total, all identical, all moving in sync. I felt something tighten in my chest. The fire crackled loudly, but even that sound seemed to fade as the lights regrouped, drifting closer to our cleared campsite. Joel stood. "Hey!" he shouted. "If you're messing with us, cut it out!" The lights didn't react. In fact, they didn't even move like they heard him. They kept their same slow pace, floating into a circle. A perfect circle. Surrounding our camp in a wide ring. Amber whispered, "Joel, do drones do that?" "No," he said quietly. I stood too, instinctively stepping closer to the fire. The ring formed completely, the lights evenly spaced, like they'd been placed with mathematical precision. The desert suddenly felt colder. Amber grabbed my arm. "Why are they doing that?" I didn't have an answer. I don't think any of us did. For a full minute, none of the lights moved. They hovered, suspended in the air at about shoulder height. Then, almost as one, they began to tighten their circle. Slowly, deliberately, inches at a time. The closer they got, the smaller the campsite felt. The shadows thickened between the trees. The rock walls around us seemed to draw inward, mirroring the motion of the lights. "Pack up," I said. "We're leaving." Joel snapped out of whatever freeze he was in. Yeah, we're leaving." Amber was shaking too hard to argue. She started grabbing bags, stuffing whatever she could reach inside. Joel stomped out the fire with one boot, cursing with every step. But the lights noticed. The moment he smothered the flames, the orbs sped up. Not insanely fast, not yet, but fast enough to feel like they were reacting. The circle tightened by another several feet. They weren't random, they weren't drifting, they were closing in. "They're watching us," Amber said. "I swear they're watching us." I didn't want to believe that, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something behind those lights, not something holding them, but something within them, was studying us, testing us, hurting us. We stumbled toward the car parked maybe 80 feet away, but every step felt like walking through a shrinking maze. The lights kept shifting position, always maintaining the circle, always keeping themselves between us and the outer darkness. Then one broke formation. It darted toward Joel so fast he tripped backward and hit the dirt. Amber screamed. The light stopped just inches from his face. No sound, no movement, just hovering like it was scanning him. "Don't move," I whispered, though I couldn't explain why. Joel lay frozen, eyes wide and unblinking. The orb flickered, once, twice, then a third time, each flash brighter than the last. The final one burned so white it washed out everything around us for half a second. When it dimmed again, Joel gasped, like something had knocked the wind out of him. "What did it do?" Amber yelled. "Joel, what did it do to you?" He didn't answer. He got up quickly, too quickly, dust sticking to his elbows and shirt, head turning toward the other 2 lights, still maintaining their circle. "They're still closing in," I said. "We have to go now." We made a break for the car. This time the circle moved faster, too fast. The lights weren't just drifting anymore. They were pulsing with speed. They streaked past trees, bending around trunks like they were weaving through the world instead of traveling through it. When we reached the car, I dove into the driver's seat, Amber into the back, Joel into the passenger seat. Before I even shut the door, the three lights slammed against every window at once. Not hard, not forcefully, just there. Pressed against the glass like eyes. Amber shrieked. Joel went silent again. I fumbled the keys, hands shaking uncontrollably. The lights drifted along the windows in slow passes, one over the windshield, sliding upward along the glass, another gliding across the rear window, casting long streaks of pale light across the interior. They circled the car the same way they'd circled the campsite. "Go," Amber whispered. "Please, go." I turned the ignition. The engine roared to life. The moment I hit the gas, the lights scattered, bursting outward in opposite directions so fast they left trails in the air. We tore down the dirt road, the tires spitting gravel behind us. My heart hammered so violently I thought it might break through my ribs. Amber kept looking back, expecting the lights to follow. But they didn't. Not right away. Only when we reached the end of the dirt road and turned onto pavement did the rearview mirror catch a faint glow in the distance. 1, then 2, then 3. Growing brighter, getting closer, following us. I drove faster. Sedona roads curved like crazy. I took turns way too sharp, nearly losing control twice. But the orbs kept pace, not closing in, just following, watching, keeping distance but never disappearing. Only when we reached the outskirts of town, streetlights, stores, houses, did the lights finally vanish. One blink they were there, the next they were gone. We didn't talk the whole way home. When we got to Joel's apartment, he stepped out without saying goodbye. No joke, no see you later, nothing. He didn't even look at us, just walked inside like something else had its hand on his back, guiding him. Amber cried the whole ride home. I barely slept that night. Sedona is full of strange stories, UFOs, spiritual sightings, weird lights in the desert, but nothing prepared me for this. Those orbs weren't machines. They weren't drones. They weren't lanterns or flashlights or anything man-made. They were alive. And the worst part? 2 days later, Joel quit his job and moved without telling anyone. Left everything behind except his car. His phone stopped working. His apartment was untouched, keys still on the table, clothes still in the closet. No sign of struggle, no sign of a plan, like something came back for him. Amber and I don't talk about it anymore. We pretend it didn't happen. But sometimes, when I'm outside at night, I swear I see a small white light drifting between the trees. Slow, silent, watching, circling, waiting for me to turn my back again. I used to work maintenance for a small utility company in northern Arizona. My job was simple: check lines, repair meters, respond to outages in small rural communities. That meant a lot of back roads, long, dusty stretches across Navajo Nation where houses sat miles apart and the desert could swallow sound like a vacuum. I'd been out near Tuba City plenty of times. Most people stick to the main road, but my job pulled me into the far edges. Little family homesteads scattered across the desert, old hogans half collapsed, and long abandoned trailers with tumbleweeds piled against their doors. But one night, I swear I drove onto a road that didn't exist the day before. It was late in October, just past 10 p.m. I was tired, hungry, and 1 mile from clocking out when dispatch radioed in about a power fluctuation reported by a family living in one of the rural areas. The man on the call said his lights were flickering and he smelled burning from the breaker box. That kind of thing couldn't wait, so I sighed, turned the truck around, and headed toward the coordinates they gave me. The main road soon turned into dirt. The desert opened wide, flat land broken only by the occasional rock outcrop or lone juniper tree. In the distance, the lights of Tuba City flickered behind a layer of dust kicked up by the evening wind. Then the GPS told me to turn left, onto nothing. I slowed. There was no road, no tire tracks, just desert. I double-checked the screen, same direction. A narrow indentation in the sand caught the headlights. A path, barely visible, like something had been dragged across it years ago. I followed it. After a few minutes, the path formed into a more solid dirt road. The desert around me got darker, quieter, no wind, no bugs, no distant dogs barking from far-off houses. It felt like driving into a place the world forgot. About 10 minutes later, the house appeared. It didn't match any structure I had ever seen up there. Most homes were modern trailers, block houses, or old hogans patched with tin. But this house, it looked like something from a different decade. Wood siding bleached gray, front porch sagging slightly, a single window glowing faintly yellow. There was no vehicle, no shed, no water tank, no signs of horses or dogs, just the house, sitting alone like someone had placed it there as a prop. I parked and grabbed my tool bag. As I approached, the door creaked open on its own. A woman stood inside, or at least I assumed it was a woman. She was small, shoulders narrow, hair long and black, hanging straight down like it hadn't been brushed in a long time. She wore a patterned shawl, old and faded. "Evening," I called, stepping closer. "I'm here about the power issue." She didn't move, didn't acknowledge me. She just watched me from the shadow beneath the doorway. Her face wasn't fully visible, just the lower half, the shape of a mouth that never opened. "My lights," she whispered suddenly. I jumped. Her voice didn't match her body. It sounded deeper, older, like a man forcing the words through a throat not built for them. "Your lights," I repeated. She nodded slowly. "Inside." She stepped backward, inviting me in. I hesitated. The air smelled strange, like wet earth mixed with something burnt. My flashlight flickered when I tried turning it on, which made no sense since the batteries were brand new. Still, protocol was protocol. People lived rough out here. Old wiring, bad breakers, weather damage. These were common issues. I forced myself inside. The interior didn't make sense. The room looked like it belonged to an abandoned house. Dust covered everything. No furniture except a table and one wooden chair. The wallpaper peeled in long strips. The floorboards bowed inward as if something heavy had walked across them repeatedly. No photos, no clutter, no signs that anyone lived here, except for the light bulb hanging from the ceiling. It glowed faintly, not warm, not bright, just a sick, pale illumination that pulsed every few seconds. The woman moved to the back hallway without making a sound. "This way," she said. Her voice echoed too much for such a small house. My instincts screamed to leave, but I followed her down the hallway anyway, which branched into 2 rooms. She pointed to the one on the left. "In there." The door was slightly open. Something moved behind it, a shadow shifting across the floor, even though there was no light inside. I pushed the door open with my boot, hand hovering near the tool bag like it could save me from anything. The room was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no boxes, no appliances, just wooden floorboards and walls warped from time. "What about your breaker box?" I asked. "Where is it?" Behind me, the woman whispered. "You came." I turned. She was standing inches away. But it wasn't her anymore. Her hair had fallen forward, covering her face completely. Her spine was arched subtly, like something inside her was holding her upright instead of her muscles. Her arms hung stiff at her sides, fingers curled inward. "Ma'am?" I said, voice cracking. "Is someone else here?" Her head jerked up, not lifted. Jerking, snapped upward like a puppet yanked by a string. Her face was wrong. Her eyes were pure black. Not pupils, not irises, just endless dark pits. Her skin stretched too tight over her cheekbones. Her mouth hung slightly open, but no breath came out. Then she smiled, not with lips, with teeth, too many of them. I stumbled backward and nearly fell. She stepped forward in perfect sync, like our movements were connected. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." Something thumped against the far wall. Then again. Then a third time, harder, like fists, or something with too many joints pounding from behind the plaster. The woman's head twitched toward the sound, then back at me, then toward it again, like she was listening for a cue. I bolted. I sprinted down the hallway, past the peeling wallpaper, past the pulsing light bulb, past the table and chair. My boots hit the porch so hard it echoed across the desert. I didn't stop until I reached the truck. When I looked back at the house, the front door was swinging open, but she wasn't standing there. No figure, no shadow, just the door creaking back and forth. I jumped into the truck and slammed the door shut. I jammed the keys into the ignition, but before I turned it, something pressed against the back window. Not a hand, not a face, a shape. It looked like a large dark mass sliding slowly downward across the glass. I couldn't make out features. Just the impression of something leaning close enough to press against the truck without making a single sound. I peeled out of there, tires spinning in the sand until they found traction. I didn't look back again until I reached the main road. When I regained signal, I called dispatch. I couldn't find the house, I lied. Probably wrong coordinates. Dispatcher sounded confused. "The man said you spoke to him. He said you were there." "There was no one," I said firmly. "Send another tech tomorrow." The house shouldn't exist, and it didn't, because when the morning tech went out the next day, he found nothing. No house, no road, no tracks, no signs of any home ever being built there. Just flat desert. A week later, I drove back on my own just to prove I wasn't losing it. I followed the same coordinates, same direction, same distance. The road wasn't there, just untouched sand. And when I looked out across that empty expanse, a single yellow light flickered. Briefly, like a dying bulb inside a window that wasn't there. I don't drive out there anymore. I don't answer calls from that sector. And late at night, when I'm lying in bed, sometimes I swear I hear a voice, deep, heavy wrong, whispering from somewhere behind the walls. You came. I've hiked in Arizona my entire life, and I thought I understood the desert. The heat, the mirages, the strange echoes. You learn to read it. You learn how to navigate washes, how to avoid stepping on rattlesnakes, how to respect the land because it will kill you if you don't. But nothing prepared me for what happened in Saguaro National Park last May. People think the desert is empty. It isn't. Sometimes it's aware, watching, waiting for you to make a mistake. I went out alone that day, something I'd done 100 times before. I knew it was risky, but I liked the solitude. Most hikers stick to the popular trails, but I preferred the old service roads and abandoned fire breaks, paths that barely existed anymore. The park is huge, and once you get a couple miles in, you can walk for hours without seeing a single person. I left around noon with a backpack full of water, snacks, and a map I barely looked at. The sky was cloudless, the air still, and the saguaros stood like silent sentinels across the desert floor. Everything felt normal, peaceful. It stayed that way for hours, until I reached a narrow canyon I'd never noticed before. It didn't appear on any map, no official trail markers, just a dry wash leading between two steep walls. Something about it caught my attention. Maybe the shade, maybe the way the wind seemed to whistle through the gap, maybe something else. I stepped inside. Almost immediately, the temperature dropped by 10 degrees. Shadows cut across the ground in sharp lines. The air smelled strange, like wet stone, even though nothing had been wet for months. After 10 minutes of walking, I noticed footprints in the sand, fresh ones. Same shoe tread as mine, same size. I crouched down, looking closer. The impressions were recent, edges clean, no signs of erosion. But something was off. They weren't leading forward. They were coming the opposite direction, toward me, like someone had been walking out of the canyon, someone with my exact boot pattern. My first thought was simple coincidence. A lot of hikers wear similar boots. I straightened up, brushed the sand from my hands, and kept walking deeper. But after a few more minutes, I saw another set, then another, all heading my direction. I stopped again. Something about the spacing bothered me. Each step matched my stride too perfectly. The distance between footprints was the same. The slight outward angle of the left foot, the same way my foot had always been just a little crooked since I broke my ankle as a teen. Someone had walked through there with my gait, my pace, my prints. I was trying to talk myself out of the fear building in my chest when something echoed through the canyon. A faint scraping sound, like someone dragging their boot across stone. I spun, scanning the ridges above me, but the walls were too steep. No one could climb them without gear. The sound echoed again, closer this time, bouncing strangely across the rock. I quickened my pace. The canyon twisted left, then right, then narrowed into a long corridor barely wider than a doorway. I moved through cautiously, rubbing between two jagged walls until I emerged into an open basin. That's when I saw them, my footprints, dozens of them, leading across the basin in a pattern that made no sense, circling, doubling back, wandering around shrubs, looping near the canyon mouth. All of them fresh, all heading toward the narrow corridor behind me, like someone had been pacing, waiting, walking in circles, or following something. My stomach turned to ice. I crouched again, inspecting the prints closer. They looked like mine. Not similar, identical, down to the smallest detail. I pressed my boot into the sand next to one. A perfect match. I stood up slowly, pulse pounding in my ears. That's when the first whisper drifted across the basin. Not a person, not the wind, a whisper in my own voice. It carried faintly, like breath on the back of my neck. Over here. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked. My ears rang. I scanned the basin, turning in slow circles, trying to find the source. Nothing moved, nothing shifted. The saguaro stood silent and still, arms raised toward the sun. Over here. The whisper came again, this time from my right. I whipped around. No one. No shadows, no movement. But more footprints appeared right where I was looking, not just sitting in the sand, appearing. One at a time. A left foot, then a right, then another. The sand shifted, compressing beneath an invisible weight. Something was walking, something I couldn't see, something wearing my steps. I stumbled backward, almost tripping over a rock. I didn't take my eyes off the footprints. They were heading straight toward me. I ran. Back into the narrow corridor, scraping my pack against the rock walls. The whispers followed, my voice calling out, mimicking breath patterns, mimicking panic. Wait! Come back! You're going the wrong way. Every hair on my body stood on end. My legs burned as I sprinted across the wash, kicking sand behind me, heart hammering wildly. I didn't know if the canyon was twisting or if the walls were different now, but the path felt wrong. Longer, darker. I kept going. When I turned the next corner, I skidded to a stop so fast I nearly fell. My footprints were there again, fresh, dozens of them. But this wasn't the same basin. This was a different part of the canyon, and the footprints weren't wandering this time. They were standing in a straight line, a long, perfect line, leading directly to where I was standing. Don't run, my voice whispered behind me. I spun. Nothing, just shadows stretching across the canyon floor, but I heard breathing, slow, deep, exactly like my own. Like someone was standing inches behind me, someone breathing in rhythm with my lungs. I stepped backward, heart pounding, and my boot landed on a fresh print. For a moment, the sand shifted under it, as if something else had stepped there first. I bolted. I didn't care which direction. I didn't care about the map or the shadows or the jagged rocks ripping at my arms. I just needed to get out. The canyon warped around me, or maybe my mind did. Every turn looked the same. Every wall looked as if it had moved an inch closer, and the footprints never stopped. Wherever I ran, they were already there, matching my pace, matching my path, matching me. When I finally saw sunlight opening up ahead, bright, blinding pure, I pushed myself harder than I ever had in my life. The canyon spat me out into open desert. I didn't stop running until the trailhead was in sight. A couple walking their dogs stared at me like I was insane. I didn't even say hello. I sprinted past them, jumped into my car, and didn't look in the rearview mirror until I hit the main road. When I did, I swear I saw footprints in the dirt behind my car. Just one set, standing still, facing the road, matching mine. I drove home without stopping once. For weeks afterward, I refused to hike alone. When I eventually tried again, I only lasted 10 minutes before turning around. The desert didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like walking through something alive, something waiting. 3 months later, I decided to check the area again during the day, just to prove to myself that I hadn't imagined everything. I went back to Saguaro, followed the same trail, found the same wash. The canyon wasn't there. No narrow walls, no basin, no twisting corridors, just flat desert and scattered saguaros. Like the canyon had never existed. But when I turned to leave, I saw something in the sand near my car. A single footprint. Fresh. Perfect. Mine. Except I hadn't stepped there yet. Something stepped where I was going, and it's been one step ahead of me ever since. I used to work seasonal ranger shifts at the Grand Canyon. People hear that and think it sounds peaceful, hiking trails, helping tourists, answering questions about lookout points. And yeah, sometimes it was like that. But the backcountry shifts, the ones deep in the inner canyon where you might go days without seeing another human, those weren't peaceful. They were quiet in a way that felt wrong. Like the canyon wasn't empty at all. It was holding its breath, listening. I never believed the stories the older rangers told. Stories about voices drifting up from the inner gorge long after sunset. Stories about lights that moved along the cliff walls where no one could possibly stand. Stories about things moving in the dark without footsteps. I thought all of it was exaggeration, old campfire nonsense meant to scare rookies. Until the night I heard the last transmission from a ranger named Hale. It was late September, still warm during the day but cold at night. Hale had been monitoring a remote section near the Tanner Trail. It's one of the more brutal parts of the canyon, steep, unpredictable, barely any shade, and no reliable water sources. He was supposed to radio in hourly, standard procedure. He checked in at 7 p.m., then 8 p.m., then 9 p.m., all clear. Routine, nothing unusual. At 10:14, he broke routine. The radio crackled once, static, faint at first. Then his voice came on, rigid, forced. "Control, I need someone on channel 2, now." I was the closest to the console. I switched over. "This is park control. Hale, go ahead." Nothing, just wind. A long, steady gust that didn't sound like normal canyon wind. It was deeper, almost like air being pulled downward into a hollow space. "Hale, status report," I said. Another few seconds passed, then I found something. His voice was thin, strained, out of breath. "What did you find?" I asked. Silence, shuffling, the sound of rocks sliding beneath boots. Then he whispered, "A door." I frowned instinctively. "A what?" "A door," he repeated. "Cut into the rock. It wasn't on any map. It's not marked. I almost didn't see it at all. It's carved into the canyon wall, down past the last switchback." "What kind of door?" "Stone," he said, "like a slab. But there's a gap, just enough to see inside." He paused, his breathing tightened. "Hold on, I'm hearing something." I pressed the transmit button halfway without speaking. Standard when you don't want to interrupt but want the person to know you're listening. More shuffling, boots scraping rock. Then Hale whispered, "There's a staircase." "A what?" I repeated. "It goes down," he breathed. "Deep, past the point where the canyon cuts off. I'm shining my light, but I can't see the bottom." "You need to leave that area," I said firmly. "Immediately. I hear something down there." "Hale, it's faint." He continued, ignoring me, like metal scraping, or breathing, or... He trailed off. "Hale, answer. Leave the area now. That's an order." He didn't respond. All I heard was his footsteps moving slowly, too slowly, toward whatever he was looking at. Then he whispered, "Someone built this." That sentence hit me worse than anything else. The canyon is full of old structures, ancestral Puebloan ruins, mining remnants, but nothing like what he was describing. Nothing hidden. Nothing carved into cliff walls where no one could reach. "Do not go down there," I repeated, louder this time. "Copy?" A long pause. Then Hale said, "I think someone already did." Static washed the channel. Then something heavy slammed in the background, like a stone door shifting against stone. The vibration carried through his radio and into ours, rattling the speakers. "That wasn't the wind," Hale whispered. I could hear it in his voice, fear sharpening every word. "What is your exact location?" I asked urgently. No response. "Hale, what direction did that sound come from?" He took a shaky breath, and the microphone picked up every tremor. "Behind me, rustling, then the unmistakable sound of a stone surface sliding again, slow at first, then faster, grinding, loud." He gasped sharply. "It's opening! It's opening!" My heart dropped. "What's opening?" I demanded. "The door." Fabric scraped against stone, his jacket rubbing as he backed away. "It's moving on its own," he whispered. "Hale, get out of there right now!" He didn't answer. Something else did. A sound came through the radio unlike anything I've ever heard. A low, resonant moan that didn't sound human. Not like an animal either. More like a deep exhale produced by something with lungs too large, too old, too heavy. It went on for several seconds. Then dozens of pebbles scattered across rock, like something dragging a massive limb. Hale finally spoke again, but his voice wasn't directed at us. "Hello," he called weakly. I slammed the transmit button. "Hale, do not engage, get out!" But he didn't move. I could hear his breathing, shallow, rapid, panicked, and then another sound. Footsteps, not boots, not paws, something heavier, deliberate, scraping stone, coming up the staircase. "Hale," I whispered into the radio, though whispering made no sense. "Run." There was a whimper on the line, then a choked sob. "I see, eyes! Get out of there!" I shouted so loud the other rangers turned to look. But Hale wasn't listening. He was frozen. You could hear it in the way his breath hitched. "They're too high," he whispered. "They're higher than my light beam." Something knocked his radio, a hard jolt. It clattered against rock. Hale gasped in pain or fear. I couldn't tell. The radio spun or slid because suddenly the mic was scraping and picking up sounds from a different direction. The footsteps grew louder. Then something else. Clicking. Rhythmic clicking, like two stones being tapped together. Fast. Getting faster. Closer. "Hale!" I tried again. "Say something. Anything." His voice came back faint, trembling, barely audible over the static. "It's behind me." I felt my entire body go cold. Then all hell broke loose. A deafening roar blasted through the speaker, a mix of grinding stone, rushing air, and something like a scream layered beneath it. The radio shrieked with feedback. Hale screamed too, but it cut off halfway, choked, crushed, swallowed by the roar. Something massive slammed the ground. Rock cracked, metal bent. I couldn't tell what was happening except for one detail. Hale was no longer speaking. Only the creature was. Heavy breaths, deep clicks, a low rumble that sounded like words from a throat not meant for language. Then, for one horrifying moment, I swore I heard it whisper something into the radio. Something in a voice not like Hale's, but like mine. "Come down." I dropped the handset. The radio stayed active another 6 minutes. Static, faint scraping, distant movement, before finally going silent. Search teams went out at first light. They didn't find a door. They didn't find a staircase. They didn't find Hale. But they did find his radio. It was lying on a ledge halfway down a sheer cliff, like something placed it there. Not dropped, not fallen, placed, and scratched into the rock beside it. Deep, jagged, unnatural was a single line. "Not alone down here." That night, I requested a transfer. I still hear Hale's voice sometimes on quiet evenings right when the wind drops and the canyon goes still. Except it isn't his voice at all. It's something deeper, something older, calling from somewhere far below the earth, calling me by name.